Okay, good morning, I guess there. Any question?
Um, Sir, I would like to ask a question about last week lessons. You mentioned that
Sure.
in the medium run that it will correct itself to its potential output regardless of in the short run where it went. Is there any reason behind it, or it's just that we have to accept that it's that's just the natural mechanism?
Oh, because remember the difference between short run and medium run is that in the medium run there is one other variable which does not change in the short run, and that variable is price. So just think about this. Think about some mechanism in which the mechanism is shocked into a disequilibrium situation. If that mechanism has one additional instrument, then that mechanism will be able more easily to depart from the disequilibrium into equilibrium, and that instrument is price. But in the short run, there is no such things like price. There is no such things like that instrument. And that's why in the short run, it is less likely, if there is any shock, it is less likely that the disequilibrium will go back to the equilibrium. So that explains why if there is any, let's say, shock, I'm not talking about major crisis, but small crisis or small shock, like what happened in 2013 in Indonesia, for example. There is a small shock into the economy, but it lasted for 2 years before it got back into equilibrium. Why it lasted 2 years? Why when the shock came, I forgot exactly what month, let's say, when the shock came in September, why it did not adjust back to equilibrium by December, for example? Because it's in the short run, price did not have a chance to make the adjustment. So the way to think is this: any system, if there are more instruments that can act as the equilibrium forces, that will be easier for that system to move from the disequilibrium into equilibrium. Or you can put the other way around. In any system, if the number of instruments is more limited, then when that system is under shock, it is very difficult to adjust from disequilibrium to equilibrium. Is this explanation clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, good. Any other question?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I want to ask about last week.
Excuse me, can you move the camera, Jana, so that I can see the person who raised the question? Okay. All right, got it.
Last week, you discussed about the labor market in Indonesia, and Kansa asked about the social media influencer. I just want to ask if whether trader is the same category as social media influencer, as you mentioned last week.
What is that?
Trader.
What is traders?
Yeah, traders.
What do you mean by traders here?
The stock market traders.
Stock market traders.
Yeah.
So what is the question again? Can you repeat the question?
Is it also in this guy's unemployment or in another category? Thank you.
I see. Okay. Well, the theoretical answer to that question is that we have to find out whether those traders who are working in the stock market improve or add to the productivity of the financial sector. So if the answer is no, then they are discussed unemployment basically. Because remember, the definition of the discussed unemployment is that with the same inputs, I was giving you the example of a piece of land, right? Let's say 1 hectare land. With the same 1 hectare, the production is 10 ton, but then you add another people working in the same 1 hectare, but then the production remains 10 tons, then that additional labor is disguised basically. So the same thing with your question in the case of traders. If those traders did not contribute anything to the productivity of depending if you're talking about traders in the stock market, then if those traders did not contribute to the productivity of that stock market, then yes, those traders are same like a disguise basically. Now, the only difference maybe is that, remember when I gave you the example of the farm sector, maybe the additional workers who work in the farm, maybe they are members of the family or friends of the farmers. So they are more willing to work voluntarily maybe. So physically they are working on the field because either they are members of the family or they are friends and so on. So they may not be paid, right? Maybe they're just given some food, but they may not be paid. But in the case of traders, they are not only paid. Usually, I may be wrong, but usually traders are paid quite highly, okay? So that's the only difference. And imagine if suppose they don't contribute to the productivity of the stock market and yet they are paid higher. You can imagine there's a big loss there in the case for the economy. So for the entire economy, it's a big loss because we have to pay those people, but then they didn't contribute to the productivity of the stock market. Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Any other question?
No, sir.
Okay, if not, let's start with today's topic. Now, if you look at the syllabus, not the syllabus, I'm sorry, the materials that we distribute for today, okay? Basically, we are discussing about other components which happen to be very important, and to me, it's a little bit neglected by most macroeconomists, and that is the role of the financial market and the expectation factor. But here, we are not talking only about the exchange rate. Remember, so far, when we talk about financial market, we only talk about exchange rate market, basically, right? But now we want to complete the financial market. And in particular, we are going to discuss about two types of financial market. One is the bonds market, and the other one is the stock market. And in order for us to understand the role of these two markets in macroeconomics, we need to understand two things. One is what happened with the price as well as the yield or the return of those markets. So if we are talking about bonds market, what happened with the price of the bonds market, what happened with the yield of the bonds, and if we talk about the stock market, we're talking about the price of the stock as well as the return on the stock, okay? So that's one thing that we need to understand in order to link this financial market with macroeconomics. The second is, of course, we have to understand also how they interact with the macroeconomics. When I said interact, it's always two-way interaction. So in other words, how these two markets affect macroeconomic variables like consumption, investment, export, import, support, as well as how these markets are affected by macroeconomics. So for example, how is the growth economy affect the stock market or the bonds market and so forth, okay? So those two things are really the key for us to understand the importance of this financial market in macroeconomics. And then towards the end, I will discuss a little bit about the global trend about this market, this financial market, okay? And if we have time, we can also discuss about possible research or possible exercise that you can do, as a group, you can do to find out about the link between financial market and the macroeconomics using the case of Indonesia. I will show you some example of a study looking at the link between the financial market and the macroeconomic variables, but in the case of the US, in the United States. But I want to sort of introduce that in case some of you are interested to do some exercise using Indonesian data. Okay, so let's start with the first one, which is how to determine and how do we understand what the price as well as the yield of the bonds market. Okay, now in order for us to understand that, we need to first have some sort of knowledge about the discount factor, because when we are talking about the price and the return of any financial asset, it's not only bonds and stock market, even in the case of mutual fund. I think in Indonesia they call it reksadana. We need to really have understanding about this discount factor here. So we will first discuss about the role of this discount factor. What do we mean by discount factor? Okay.